managing editor of GameSpot.com, and we're going to be playing some Call of Duty Infinite Warfare Zombies today. I'm joined by a recurring friend of the show, Lee Ross. What is your exact role and title over at the team?
I am the in-house crazy guy, also known as the Associate Project Director for Zombies at Infinity Ward, where we are introducing this last episode, The Beast from Beyond, today.
Yeah, we've had several of the, you've come on and showed us a lot of different things from the Zombies one, but this is the final one, it kind of rounding out the season and a narrative, a story that you guys have also told across these different chapters.
Yeah, this is the culmination of all the efforts that Willard Wyler has been throwing these four characters through over this span, beginning in Zombies in Spaceland. So here we finally, hopefully fans can survive, and we will survive to show people a little bit of this today, but hopefully they'll survive long enough to find out exactly what Willard's been up to this whole time, why he's chosen our four heroes, why were the celebrities chosen in the past, and ultimately what's going to happen. Are they going to escape this thing? Are they going to kill Willard Wyler? What's going to happen?
Well, let's go ahead and jump into a match, and we'll start talking while we're playing. Fortunately, you don't have to deal with me playing the game and dying over and over again. Lee will be taking the controls here on this stream, and we also have Eric Tay and Joey Yee joining us in the background.
So Lee will try to survive today. I'm sure Eric will keep us alive, our ringer back there.
Eric Esports Tay. People know this from a lot of our GameSpot streams. Tay is probably our biggest professional esports player across multiple games.
Yeah, I've heard to watch out for his gamer tag. That one, if I see him in something like Overwatch or something, I should just run. So, you know, I'll try to represent today.
So Call of Duty, especially these zombies modes, I think they always introduced a colorful cast of characters. I loved seeing Paul Rubens. Did you get to work with him in the VO booth, or get to interact with him at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had the luxury of having a very colorful cast, as you put it. Paul Rubens, of course, joining us in the outset, playing our evil director, Willard Wyler. And of course, we've had a few guests along the way that have joined our cast of protagonists, you know, the likes of David Hasselhoff and Kevin Smith, most recently Elvira, and of course Pam Grier joining us for Shaolin Shuffle when we went back to the 70s. And then of course, rounding out the cast, playing Poindexter, we have Seth Green returning, hopefully to make his way out. Andre being played once again by the awesome Jay Farrow. And then of course, Sally being voiced by Sashir Zameda. And of course, last but not least, oh, we're gonna survive this. Ike Barinholtz playing our character AJ, that people just love to assume he's up to no good.
So this is probably the closest in look to Infinite Warfare, but that's not because this is set in the Infinite Warfare world. This is a different horror setting, as we've seen with the other chapters in Zombies.
Yeah, so this is just like the other films, as you mentioned. They're inspired by horror films that sort of fit this genre. Whether that might be the Alien films starring Sigourney Weaver, or films like Event Horizon. The idea was sort of to play up on the claustrophobic spaces of what it would be like for space travelers, whether you're actually on a spaceship or in a facility that is sort of keeping you alive while you're dealing with the elements of some unknown planet, which is where we actually happen to be in this episode. So yeah, we're definitely keeping that movie feel alive. Just happen to harken back to different films aside from the things that we did in Zombies in Spaceland. So slightly less colorful, a little darker, and just a little bit creepier in some places. And of course, as you've seen, we've been fighting the vicious cryptids, which are making their return from one of our first co-op endeavors in Call of Duty, Extinction Mode. The cryptids are back, and they are quite a force to reckon with. So we're going to try and survive here long enough to extinguish some of these cryptids and hopefully restore the facility's AI and power systems here.
How many hours a week do you think you get to play Call of Duty?
Oh man, I play quite a bit more than people might assume. Part of that is because you know, I'm just play testing and making sure that everything works. One of you guys that are playing with me, I think you guys can turn Neil's head on if you can get to it. But yeah, I spend a lot of time playing the game, and part of it is just making sure that things feel right, whether it's a specific weapon or one of the Fate and Fortune cards that we're utilizing, or one of the bosses that we're fighting. So it's really something that the team strives to do every single day as we iterate through the process. We're constantly playing. And then of course, besides from myself playing, we bring people in from external sources that help us make sure it feels right to them as well, because we were not building this experience solely for us. This is a community effort that we're striving to make sure that that everyone gets a chance to enjoy this Call of Duty Zombies experience.
I think this is a really interesting point. Obviously not something new, but going to this Afterlife arcade to bring yourself back into the game.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I chose to play Cryptid Attack, and that's something that we introduced way back in Zombies in Spaceland to kind of plant the seed that these cryptids were going to be making their way back from extinction and into this zombies endeavor. Now, if I did that fast enough, we should be seeing zombies, and if I was too slow, we're going to be getting one more round of cryptids, which we should be able to hang through.
In a big part,
we got the zombies. Awesome. Good work, everybody.
You guys like to plant the seeds of things people are going to be seeing in these later episodes throughout the entire game, and I guess a lot of that's going to be paying off now in this final episode.
Yeah, if you've been paying close attention, we've actually the name for this episode was sitting on a marquee sign in Attack of the Radioactive Thing. It was hidden in plain sight, and a lot of people speculated, what's the name of it going to be? It's going to be this, it's going to be that. A lot of people thought we were just going to title it Extinction, but ultimately we've kind of done this over and over and over again. Even Attack of the Radioactive Thing, we had a comic book that was hiding in Shaolin Shuffle that if you collected that comic book, you would see that we were clearly telling you what you were going to fight, what the name of the episode was going to be like, and those kind of things. So it's something that we love to do. We love to hide things in plain sight, and then also drop information really early that you might not pay really close attention to, but find out that it's ultra relevant later on down the road.
So going through the episode, I haven't jumped in myself yet, but I don't immediately recognize anything as a direct homage to any specific films. Is there anything that you would call out as like what you drew inspiration from for anything in this map?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really love some of the more classic horror films. So like The Thing, as an example, having that ice setting, knowing that you can't just run and leave this facility because otherwise you'll just freeze to death. The elements will get you. So even having that, there's a little bit of that notion in there. Obviously, the cryptids, when we created them way back in Extinction, they were a direct reaction to a lot of the alien types that we had seen in various films, whether that be Ridley Scott's aliens or even little gray aliens like E.T. We wanted to sort of pay homage to that type of alien creature. The facility itself, we were kind of going for almost an Event Horizon look. I think a little less bloody and horror sort of feeling, but the idea that clearly something has gone wrong. When you're seeing the cement and debris sort of blown open and holes created here, this doesn't look like it's something that was made intentionally. And the fact that the facility itself is sort of in lockdown mode. We see, rough barricades where, wooden boards and things are trying to hold things out. Clearly something has gone very wrong here. And with the film Event Horizon, upon boarding that ship, immediately you can kind of get that icky feeling like, you know what, something's off and I should probably watch my back. Oh, that's quite all right. Nukes are always good.
All right, so you're in a facility on space, right?
Yep.
Where are you getting these wooden boards from? Are these imported?
You know what? I love that you asked that question because the characters poke fun at the fact that the wooden boards are still here in space. So in some of the VO, we actually have some fun with the fact that some of the mechanics, while they're tried and true mechanics to zombies, they don't necessarily fit the theme 100%, and that's the thing that kind of makes the characters go, Willard, what's going on here? What's up with the wooden boards? Can we get some steel reinforced laser trap windows or something? So yeah, we actually poke fun at ourselves for that, but it's also one of the staples of Zombies is knowing that you can walk up to these windows, that you can place these boards, you can get a little bit of cash back, and then feel safe for all of 10 seconds while the zombies rip them down. I'm going to see if we can venture our way outside a little bit, but before we do that, I'm going to earn a little cash in here first. So one of the things I'd like to tell a lot of the players who are struggling with the difficulty early on is you might have noticed that our success was really due to the fact that we got the power on right away, that we didn't spend a lot of time exploring and examining the world. This is going to be like getting thrown into a blender right away. So you've got to get the AI facility restored so that you have Neil sort of supporting you and shutting off the biological threat known as the cryptids, and then also get the zombies spawning in because they're a much easier thing to deal with. It will reintroduce common gameplay themes like being able to train the zombies in some of these spaces, like these open spaces we have here are fantastic for training and really getting some big kills. And then, of course, there's some awesome traps to lead them through it. And that kind of leads back to the question you were asking about what did we use films for as far as inspiration. We have a couple of different locations in here where we have traps that are sort of themed back to experiences that we had seen in other movies before. So I don't have the cache, I'm about 60 short, but this hallway here, which I'm gonna open in just a second, we've got a laser trap that's reminiscent to Resident Evil, the movie. You know that moment where the guy tries to walk down the hallway and he jumps over the first laser beam, he ducks under the second one, and he does all this parkour stuff, and he's like, all right, I survived it, and all of a sudden, the laser grid comes and he's just diced to pieces. So we're definitely looking at things like that where we see them in films where we see something really cool ways to be mutilated, decapitated, whatever it may be. So the laser trap from Resident Evil, the film, is something that we wanted to bring back. Now, it's not exactly like that trap, but it definitely gives the feeling and gives off the idea that we might have seen that somewhere else before.
Yeah, and another really big aspect of just zombies in general are the Easter eggs that you guys hide throughout this. And I assume there's going to be a lot of payoff in this final episode where people finally get to the root of these things that they found.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we really went all out on is our Easter eggs. You know, we've built the Easter eggs in many different ways throughout the season. We want to have small things that people can kind of pick up on just by looking around and going, oh, I recognize that from some other pop culture reference. But also we want to build the things that players really enjoy digging deep in, lifting every stone and figuring out what's underneath it, and we've definitely built that experience into it. Now, of course, Beast from Beyond is going to have all of its awesome Easter eggs present, but at the same time, there's something that we've introduced in this episode that players have been being teased about all year long, and that's our super Easter egg known as the Director's Cut. And what the Director's Cut Easter egg is we've sent players through collecting these soul keys, and now players have always wondered what's the purpose for these soul keys? Why do I need them? And the idea is that once you've collected the soul keys, you can actually unlock the true form of these films and actually really make changes in them. And our heroes that have been in these episodes before us, whether it's Kevin Smith or Pam Grier or David Hasselhoff, they've sort of referenced the fact that these films are sort of like the easy versions of the films. And so Director's Cut is going to introduce all new Easter eggs. It's going to allow some of the Easter eggs that we've teased fans about, like the Yeti Eye Easter egg all the way back in Zombies in Spaceland. They're going to now be able to gain access directly to those Easter eggs. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, we are definitely going to let players find out what exactly is going on. Why has Willard Wyler pulled these 4 heroes into this film? And ultimately, what is going to happen to them? What's going to happen to Willard? All of us will get to find out in the end.
Do you feel like this is the more challenging chapter that you guys have released so far?
Oh, absolutely. This is the chapter that everything we've taught you thus far has been a learning lesson for what you're going to face in this episode. So in each of the episodes, we've introduced new creature types, obviously different boss strategies and ways to play the game. You'll need to understand and know all of those different tactics in order to survive the Beast from Beyond. So I've just made my way back into the theater, and this is a place that fans have always wanted to go. There's me looking back at the Beast from Beyond. I've made my way literally out of the screen. And a Cryptid bomb, so I'm going to kill him. And this actually brings us back into Willards Theatre, the very theater that he pulled us into Zombies in Spaceland initially. We've now made our way into, and we're actually able to fight in this space, which is a pretty interesting thing. Now, the scary part about that is all of these films featured in Willard's terrible library, unfortunately, are now able to be released. And so by opening up this space, I've actually opened up the theaters for Zombies in Spaceland, Attack of the Radioactive Thing, Shaolin Shuffle. All of the episodes actually, some of their best, or should I say, some of their worst enemies are going to come forward. So the slasher from Rave, if you were terrified of that guy, he's back. If you were afraid of the Kung Fu Zombies in Shaolin Shuffle, those guys have made their return. We have the exploding clowns from Zombies in Spaceland have made their return. So there's lots of different things that are basically going to be thrown in the player's face. As we like to say, the kitchen sink is being thrown at you this time around. So everything you've learned, you'll really need to use it. Now, not only just specifically for this episode, but like I talked about in that super Easter egg, whatever's waiting for you at the end of that, you will need everything and then some to survive what's waiting ahead. So you'll need all this training. We promise. We've made it hard for a very good reason.
So the overall theme for this Zombies expansion has seemed to be kind of more, I guess, lighthearted, I would say in some ways, well, a fun take on that Zombies world. What's it been like working in that kind of environment? Like, where did those ideas come from?
Well, it's definitely a team effort. You know, we sit down and try to figure out what it is we want to do, what are our challenges that we want to put in front of ourselves and ultimately overcome. One of some of my favorite films, one of them being An American Werewolf in London, and another one being Shaun of the Dead, two of probably my all-time favorite horror films. They're also spiced with a lot of comedy. And I like the fact that you can have a world that's having a very serious event take place, but at the same time, there's a very lighthearted approach. And you saw this even in films like Zombieland as well, where the characters are kind of able to pop jokes in between sort of these moments of desperation, trying to survive this really like terrible situation. And I mean, we're playing games, we want to have fun. That everything doesn't have to be ultra serious. While we have a serious layer that's sort of hidden underneath all of that within our story and what's taking place, we also wanted to have some fun. We have some really great talent that are comedians themselves. Jay Farrow, Sashir Zameda, they're amazing stand-up comedians themselves. And so bringing them into a really serious tone, while their acting range can certainly support it, their strengths are certainly in comedy. And so we wanted to play up on the strengths of those characters, as well as bring a lighthearted approach that I think is a very welcoming thing to a much larger audience than, say, a very serious approach to zombies, where you might have to say, hey, you know, kids, go to bed. This is going to be a little bit too scary for you. Our Zombies is a little less scary. It's definitely very serious, but at the same time, it's also one of those experiences that it's not so terrible, it's not so gruesome and awful that everyone needs to stay away or put the kids to bed early.
And thinking about coming up with this stuff, were you able to, or was the team able to iterate on ideas, or to be able to see that feedback from the audience and maybe change some things that might have felt like they weren't going in the right direction, especially now coming to this final chapter?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we're always doing that. One of the things that we've done, and we've strived really hard for this entire season with Zombies, is we wanted to be really engaged with the audience. We wanted to get out there, be on Twitter, be in Reddit, chime in on YouTube streams, and really make it a point that we were really letting fans know that we were listening, that this was just as much their game as it is ours. I mean, ultimately, like I said earlier, we don't create these titles for ourselves. We're creating this for a large audience of people. And so, you know, we want to hear what people think about the product, whether it's something that they love, or whether it's something that they just find to be distasteful, or they just flat out don't like. And we like to challenge them with, can you tell us why? What is it about that experience that we could do differently or alter just a little bit that would actually draw you in and make you more of a fan? And we've had moments within development where we've certainly course corrected. You know, initially we had our UFO fight, our alien grain zombies in Spaceland was, I think, set at a bar that we thought, here's where the core Zombies player wanted to be playing it. They wanted to be playing at this really high bar. But we also wanted to get a lot of new players in, because while a lot of people play Zombies, everyone on the planet's not playing it, and ultimately that's our goal. We want to get everybody in the world playing the game if we possibly can. So we wound up toning that fight down a little bit so that we can get more people engaged. And it was also a little counterintuitive to the fact that we had built in a tutorial and sort of a system that sort of guided players through the experience a little bit in the beginning, and then at the end of it, it was like, all right, now we're going to make things really hard. So we course corrected that a little bit. We wound up making that fight just a tad bit easier, balancing it a little bit more. And that was direct feedback that we received from the community. A lot of people were getting to that fight and saying, you know, I can't beat this thing. I really like your game, but I really want to be able to get through this experience. And so ultimately we wound up making some minor adjustments there. And then of course, while we're going through the season, we're introducing new content, which we've done all year long. We have a bunch of new content that comes free of charge to players that are along for the ride with us. So when we release Fate and Fortune cards, those cards are backwardly compatible with all the previous experiences. So we released 2 new Fate and Fortune cards in this map, alongside this map, Skull Hacker and Pack and Heat. And Skull Hacker allows you to complete, well, not necessarily complete, but jump to the end game of one of our biggest Easter eggs, which is our Ghost and Skulls arcade machine, where you literally become a player inside the game. And then Pack and Heat allows you to double pack a punch a random weapon into your hand. It could be a wonder weapon, it could be just a regular OSA, it could be any weapon that ends up in your hand, double pack. Now, in Zombies in Spaceland, the ability to double pack your weapon early on wasn't available to you, so you could never fight the alien gray with a double packed weapon. Now with that card, spawn it in your hand, and you can actually have a weapon that you could take that alien gray on right out of the gate from the beginning of the game. So those are just some examples of ways that we've added additional layers of support to fans so that they can actually get through this experience. And then last but not least, the director's cut content that we created for players that are able to make it through that content, they're going to be rewarded handsomely. You know, we're going to give them the things that they've been asking for. Players have wanted the ability to have Perkaholic, to have these ways to sort of play the game where they're in control of the outcome of what's happening in that sandbox. And so we're going to put that power back into the players' hands and allow them to have just a little bit more fun by being able to go back through Zombies in Spaceland or Raven the Redwoods or any of those other maps and sort of have new experiences, but at the same time be a little bit more empowered in those experiences. And hopefully take a couple of their friends along for the ride that weren't able to survive maybe the first time around.
So is Director's Cut aimed more at that core, really skilled audience, or do you feel like the skill cap is low enough that that's also something for everybody?
I think it's pointed at both, and it's a combination of whether it's skill or whether it's using things to your advantage. So whether it's using specific Fate and Fortune cards, or if it is using the weapon kits to upgrade your weapons, whether you're upgrading them in MP or in Zombies. Throughout the season, we've continuously continued to empower the player. So I think by the time we get to the end of this and we have Director's Cut players playing with the non-Director's Cut players, we have all the various Fate and Fortune cards available, all the weapons are unlocked to players, there's going to be quite a bit of power and quite an arsenal in our fans' hands. So we were able to restore the power. We've got our zombies that are going to be spawning on us now.
How long does a full run through of this generally take you at this point?
Oh, that's a great question.
When you have a better team than us.
If you know how to do everything, if you know where everything is, obviously the boss fight itself is going to be challenging. I'd say it's probably going to take you about an hour to an hour and a half to get through all of the content. And that's about the average of all of our Zombies experiences. It could be anywhere from an hour to 2 hours depending on your skill level and depending on how fast you sort of progress some of the Easter eggs. But again, that Director's Cut content is going to reopen this content for you and give you some new things to explore. So to go through everything, all episodes, plus the Director's Cut content, I think players are looking at dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of content to consume. Which is ultimately what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that we went out with a really big bang with this last DLC here with the Beast from Beyond.
Are you sad to be leaving it behind? Like now this is the end of a really long journey.
Yeah, I think I feel a little bit of that with every project that I complete. I've been in the game industry a long, long time now, and I think with every title that you sort of put on the shelf and leave it to chill, you look back on it, you think of all the challenges that you faced and overcame. You think of all the new things that you were able to introduce and bring to the table. So yeah, there's a little bit of sadness, but then I think there's also the little bit of excitement of, we did this thing, what are we going to do next? What is the next thing that we're going to do? And so I know myself and my team, we're all really excited about getting to our next endeavor, but also making sure that what we do here leaves a really good memory and a really good taste in people's mouths so that the next time they come around and want to play our content, they go, hey, I remember what those guys did, and they're excited to jump back in with us.
Yeah, it's not like people have a long time to wait for even more Zombies content because we have another Call of Duty World War II coming up.
Yes.
Have you gotten to play much of their zombie stuff?
I have, and they have some really great ideas, some really great concepts going on. I think people will be very excited once they get their hands on World War II. Whether it's the amazing campaign those guys have built or the really awesome multiplayer. For those of you that have played the beta and played War, you know what I'm talking about. And then definitely their Zombies experience is going to continue the theme of getting players to play cooperatively together in a really challenging experience. All the things that you've come to know and love with Zombies, whether it be digging for Easter eggs or high round survival, us just like them, that experience is built for those players, and those fans are definitely kept in mind.
Yeah, how does that work on the development side? Because there is that trade-off of Call of Duty, and you think of that as like, I think in a lot of ways is the multiplayer and the campaign, but Zombies has become such an integral part of that as well. But it feels like there's also a lot of institutional knowledge. How do you share that between teams when you do that trade-off to the next group who's going to be making this?
Well, I think it's really dependent on the team. I think some teams tend to be a little more isolated, and we're one of those groups for sure. We built this Zombies experience without the support of Sledgehammer or Treyarch. This was all done by the Infinity Ward Zombies team. So it really depends on how much you want to reach out. Now, that's not to say that we don't share tech, because we do share, an engine that we run our games across, and there's certainly some of that sort of crosses the aisle. But I think for the most part, the studios are fairly independent. They come up with their own concepts and ideas, and each of us are trying to push the envelope just a little bit more than the last one. And so there's a little bit of that competitive nature where we want to one-up them, they want to one-up us. And ultimately, the only person that really wins here is the fans. And that's really who should be winning. They poured their money into our pockets, and they're pouring their time into our product. And so we want to pour everything we've got into creating a great, compelling experience. And I don't think that differs between us or Treyarch or Sledgehammer, whoever's at the current helm for releasing that version of Call of Duty that year.
Is there a particular highlight that really stands out from you guys and what you've created with this version of Zombies? You're like, yeah, no one else is going to be able to touch that.
I would love to say that, but honestly, I think we all strive to do awesome new stuff and bring great new content to the table. For us, I think it's a culmination of a lot of different ideas. We sort of strove for not only making an experience that was true to the Zombies experience. This is a round-based thing. You're fighting hordes and hordes of zombies. There are the hidden Easter eggs and all those things that sort of stay true to it. But we also wanted to go for quality of life improvements. One of the things that we're super proud of, this hats off to our engineers at Infinity Ward, but our game you never see a loading screen. There's no point in which you have to stop and stare at a loading screen in order to get back into the game. And that's something that we're really proud of that we were able to achieve with this game. The other thing is our Afterlife arcade. We want to keep players engaged all the time. So when you die, you have something to do. You're not just staring and watching at your teammate playing and sort of filling his highlight reel or her highlight reel. So it's all of those little touches, all the little additions that we made, whether it's walking up to a perk machine and being able to drop the perk that you have so that you can pick up and switch to a different perk. The type of Easter eggs that we built, whether it be the really small things that pay homage to movies or films or television shows, but then also those really deep-rooted Easter eggs that get sort of crowdsourced by the whole community, where everyone's pouring their thoughts into, how to uncover, how to figure out what this last thing might be. So yeah, I think we're always looking for something great. And if I had to pick any one thing, I would definitely say it's all of the iterative designs that we've had from previous ventures into Zombies. The way that we've approached fighting bosses, or the way that we've approached dealing with special waves or Easter eggs or any of those things. So I think it's the culmination of all of those ideas that sort of make up this different thing. Even our cinematics being cartoons versus being computer-generated images, it really sets us apart. I think when people look at our game and look at Sledge's next endeavor, they're going to clearly see that this was Infinite Warfare, and World War II definitely is not that game. It is a completely different experience.
Have you guys been crunching pretty hard to finish this up, or has it been kind of a more leisurely? Because you're used to this now. You guys have, I'm sure, a well-oiled machine of getting this content out. But is there still that crunch every time you have right before a new episode comes out?
I definitely think there's a bit of a crunch whenever you're putting content out, and I think really that comes down to the developers want this to be the best thing that they can possibly have fans receive. So we crunch pretty hard. We're a pretty small team. My Zombies team is actually much smaller than I would say any of the other Zombies teams working at the other studios, and so because we are a smaller team, we do have to be a well-oiled machine. But the benefit that we have is this team has been working together, harkening back all the way to Extinction, and even titles before working on Call of Duty, whether it be Guitar Hero or Tony Hawk games when we were at Neversoft. So yeah, I think there's a point where you reach where you kind of know what your team is thinking, what everybody sort of gelled upon. And making decisions can be really easy when you can look left and you can look right and everyone's sort of automatically on the same page. So yeah, you do have to be a well-oiled machine to get this content out as fast as we do, but then also as content-rich as we do. I don't think anyone can argue that our content hasn't been crammed just to the max, as much as we could possibly get everything in. We've certainly tried, whether it be, like I said, small little tiny Easter eggs, or the really, really big, tough ones to have our QA team go through and make sure they all work and function, so that way when they release, people aren't hit with game-breaking bugs, which unfortunately, it happens. And so the beauty of the way that games have sort of blossomed into the future, present day, is that you can actually have a game-breaking issue and tomorrow it's fixed, it's patched, and that's an amazing thing. So, as much as we'd like to make sure every single little thing works, the audience outnumbers my QA team by quite a large margin, and so some of the things they find, we might have attempted to uncover some of those things, but the challenges is that we face with testing every single scenario, unfortunately, leaves some stones unturned, which means we have to be agile in the sense that we have to course correct and make changes even post ship of some of our content.
I mean, I remember when there was so much trepidation around that always online world, and now I feel like that's almost accepted as that's the way things are. Like the people welcome that because it does give you immediate access to fixes, to more content.
I couldn't imagine a world without it. I grew up playing, SNES, NES, Sega Master System, all the classic stuff, and I couldn't imagine what it would have been like to be able to add new levels to Super Mario Bros. 3. I would have bought that DLC in a heartbeat. What it would have been like to have an online experience of a game like Tetris or Super Contra or any of those things where you could just jump in and play with your friends. Now, the infancy of what online was, I remember I had my my Sega Saturn with my 28.8 modem, and I was playing Phantasy Star, and I can't even remember what games I was playing, but it was an experience where if someone picked up the phone, you were disconnected.
Yeah.
It was dial-up, all that stuff. So where we are today, the advent of gaming today, where you can have gigs of data downloaded to a machine and have new content. Man, I couldn't imagine going back. This is a great time for gaming, and the digital stuff. I buy so much digital content at this point, and it's so convenient, especially if you're playing in different places. I have a PS4 at my house. I have a PS4 in my office, but I also want to play the same content. I don't want to necessarily have to abandon that content because I didn't bring a disc with me. So being able to log in at one place and log in at another and pick up where I left off has just been an absolutely wonderful thing to have happen to video games.
Yeah, I remember a shareware copy of Castle Wolfenstein when you have to. I didn't even, to unlock the game, you would have to answer a question about it. It would ask you something from the manual. I'm like, I don't have a manual. So eventually it would make enough sense, or I would be able to figure something out, because it was also before there was enough stuff on the internet for you to go to a page and find out what those were. To unlock the game, you had to just figure out what password it's looking for.
And everything needed a strategy guide. There was no go to YouTube and watch my favorite YouTube streamer and they're basically painting exactly the golden path for me and what I need to do and where I need to go. So that's a really lovely thing too. And then the other thing, the social media aspect of games, and even the fact that you have a lot of these features sort of pre-baked into the consoles now, where your PS4 can stream to Switch and have all this content out there. It really has just revolutionized the way people look at gaming. I mean, I find my son going on YouTube and literally watching people just play content all the time. And it's amazing how engaged he is with some of the videos where he's like, I just want to uncover this one little secret that I can't. And then he finds himself in the game and he's like, yes, I'm celebrating this thing that I finally achieved. So it's a really amazing time for gaming. Absolutely amazing.
Have you gotten a chance to watch It? Going with that horror theme.
So It was supposed to be on my watch list this weekend, but unfortunately, Southern California was randomly struck by thunderstorms in my area, and our power was out. And so our theater, our local IMAX, which is where I wanted to see it, unfortunately was having these sort of rolling blackouts take place. So it is on my to-do list this week. So please, no spoilers in my inbox for those of you that have seen it. I've heard it was very good, very scary, and I see that it's breaking box office numbers, but please, no spoilers to Mr. Ross.
And so do movies and things like that are coming out now, does that give you any inspiration for your next project? Because obviously this isn't going to be the end for you. Do you look at that kind of stuff and think like, what could we do next? What kind of elements could I add to my next project?
Absolutely, all the time. And I think that's in everyday life. I think you walk around and you see things where you say, wow, that would be cool in the game. That's not something that's in our game now, but if we had that, that would actually be interesting. Even some of the concepts that we come up with for what a weapon can do. Sometimes you see something silly like you see a Dyson vacuum commercial, and all of a sudden you're like, I could see this doing something like this, and although it's not a Dyson vacuum I'm gonna run around with, I could probably see something else behaving like this. So yeah, I think there can be inspiration found in all walks of life when it comes to game development, whether it's movies, TV, whether it's real world experiences. I mean, the team, before we built Zombies in Spaceland, one of our reference trips was to actually go out and go to a theme park. And we chose to go to Knott's Scary Farm in Southern California, where they were having their Halloween event. And it was such an amazing experience because they build all these haunted house experiences where things are jumping out at you and people are dressed as scary clowns and things like that. And it's absolute inspiration. When you look at that, you say, wow, this is actually cool because people are doing this in real life. So if we put this in the game, it's got to make sense, right? And a lot of times it does. A lot of times it just fits.
I was going to ask if you guys do a lot of those kind of group trips. Do you have like, here's the day when we're all going to watch the thing, and you guys are going to see, for anybody who hasn't seen it before, to understand the kind of feel that we're going for with this remote station set in an icy type world?
I wouldn't necessarily say that we do it all as a group, but independently, it is something that we find ourselves doing where we'll say, this is something you should pay attention to. Check out this piece of content from this thing or that thing. That is absolutely something where someone will say, hey, I just saw this particular movie or watched this show and it has this moment in it. Watch this thing and tell me what you think about it. So we do find that we pass media back and forth to each other where, whether it be a movie or TV show or whatever it might be. Yeah, we're definitely in sync when it comes to stuff like that.
Has there been anything that you've discovered from your team that you just weren't aware of before working on a project like this?
From the team themselves?
Yeah, like something somebody has introduced you to that you're like, oh wow, this is really cool. I wish that I had seen this earlier.
My team has introduced me to their insanity because they are an absolutely crazy bunch, and I love them for it because they are the only group that makes me feel at home because I'm pretty insane myself. So, yeah, pushing the boundaries of what we think we can do, what we thought we could do when we went into some of these experiences. I mean, just stepping back into Rave in the Redwoods, where you have sort of this multicolored rave world, or Shaolin Shuffle, where it's this alternate universe of New York City. These are ideas that come up from the entirety of the team. This is not just me or any other one person that decides all of this stuff. We do it as a group, and I think that's what's really special about it is how much we trust each other, how much we rely on each other to come up with great content. Whether it be my art director, Jake Geiger, telling us this is why the skybox should be a certain color, or this is why the heroes should wear these types of outfits. It comes from everywhere. So in each of the episodes, we did find out that some people were a little bit passionate about more things than others. Come to find out, our project director, Brian Bright, is a pretty awesome breakdancer and also used to rave quite a bit back in the day. And so, pro tip, if you look at the Rave in the Redwoods Ravers, that's actually motion capture of Brian Bright. Brian, I'm so sorry to tell people that, but I had to let that cat out the bag. So yeah, I mean, it's little things that you pick up like that. Our art director, Jake Geiger, who I mentioned earlier, turns out that he is a huge Star Trek fan. So coming into space, he was very excited to do that. But at the same time, you'll actually notice that there are references to Star Trek itself. Like Andre is wearing a red outfit. And in Star Trek, red outfit usually means you're the first person to die. And of course, we wound up writing that into the script and talking about, hey, how come I'm wearing the red shirt? You guys want to do a wardrobe change real quick? So it's things like that. I think we all sort of bring a little bit of magic and craziness to the table that helps make these experiences come to life.
So we probably have room or time for one more run through of this. Hopefully we're a little more successful. We're sorry that our team is not helping you out at all.
Oh, we're actually doing pretty good. I played 3 public matches last night right before going to bed. And the first team I ran with, we died repeatedly. And I think the biggest issue is that We had no one on microphone, people just kind of scattering around going crazy and trying to face the cryptids the same way that they would face the zombies. And as you can see, I can kind of chill and look at this guy for a while, lead him around. But if I see a cryptid, that cryptid can get to me. And you have to face them a lot differently. So the fact that we were able to survive the first round, get the power restored, and sort of explore the facility, I'm pretty impressed with.
And I feel like that's always a challenge with multiplayer games, is that it's easier, it's more fun when you're with friends and you're able to coordinate over microphones, but you also have to balance it for people who maybe don't have a microphone or just are jumping into random matches with other people. How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, that's a great point. First and foremost, this is a cooperative experience, and so we build that experience first. The idea is that we realize the most fun you're going to have is playing with 3 of your buddies, three of your family members, whoever, and going through that experience as a team feels the best. And so we want that experience to feel really good. At the same time, we also want to make sure that someone who just wants to play on their couch by themselves on a Saturday night and they're just going to hang out and enjoy themselves, we want to make sure that all of our Easter eggs, and this is true to everything we've made, every single Easter egg that we've placed in the game can be completed whether cooperatively or in solo. So this is built and balanced for every single experience, whether you're playing a solo match, a 2-player match, a 3-player match, or 4-player. This is designed for you to have a good time no matter what that combination of players is. And like I said, we also want to make sure that there's no content that's out of reach simply because you don't have a friend to play with or a partner to team up with at the time. So everything that you can see in the cooperative experience, you can also have those experiences in solo as well. And the balancing is always tough. The balancing is always one of those things that right down to the wire, we're making changes based off of last-minute feedback on whether it's weapon balancing, whether it's fate and fortune cards, whether it's how much cash you earn versus how much you have to spend to open up doors to get to power. It's a constant juggling match for us to find the right equation that gets people ultimately to have a smile on their face.
Because it's not just the number of enemies that necessarily make it more difficult. You have the types and then what's available to you as a player.
Exactly that. And in this one, since now that we're in this space, we're actually going to have all of the different types that we had talked about. So you'll notice that the zombies aren't necessarily wearing spacesuits anymore. You'll start to see the 80s themed zombies, the 90s themed zombies all making their way through here as well. So yeah, it is all the different types. And of course, each time we introduce one of these maps, we always have the special types. In this particular instance, it's the cryptids. We've only seen one handful of the cryptids, and there's definitely other types and other versions of them which are far worse than the ones we've been facing so far. But there's also all the different zombies types. So we might be lucky enough to survive long enough to start seeing some clowns. We might survive long enough to see some ravers. There's some of the ravers. And some other really terrible guys have made their return, like the slasher from Raven the Redwood. So yeah, balancing this map for all those different types has been quite a challenge, but we feel like we got it to a really sweet spot, and we hope fans are having a really good time facing the challenge we've presented them with thus far.
Do you have any particular fears? Is there anything like making this kind of thing you're like, I didn't really want to make clowns?
Oh, you know what? That certainly wasn't me. I saw Stephen King's It when it was a television series, and although very frightening, clowns were never my thing. My fear is actually something we haven't played with much here, is heights. I'm not a fan of like people who mountain climb with no rope and things like that. Like just watching that stuff makes me feel uneasy. We did play with verticality a little bit. In fact, we introduced that in the trailer, and the fact that in this map we have a few different height variants. As you're going through the facility, there's cases where you can be on the 3rd floor and jump down 2 floors. And we wanted to play around with that because that's something that you don't get to do very often in Zombies. It's something, especially with a boots on the ground experience, you're pretty much on a single plane all the time. But that was a case where we wanted to get players sort of moving around through the space just a little bit differently than we normally had.
Yeah, heights are something that I feel like you really experience that in something like VR.
Yes.
Like that's something that can really touch on that fear.
A zombie VR experience would be pretty awesome.
Hey, have you gotten to play much VR? I think another big horror game that we had earlier this year, Resident Evil 7, did that to really great effect, but it feels like that might be harder to accomplish with something like Call of Duty, like when you're moving really fast, when you're shooting a lot.
Yeah, I think for Call of Duty it could work, but it's also the expectation of how VR as an application is handled. Part of it is that you're usually stationary, but you need to be able to have some amount of movement. You know, I have an HTC Vive at home, which I've played a tremendous amount of and really enjoy. It requires a decent amount of movement, because the first thing we realized, my wife and my kids at home, we realized that we swing our arms quite wildly when we play VR, and we bang into televisions and knock speakers off the wall and all that kind of stuff. So you have to build the experience for the format, and I think VR has a very specific way that it's played in its current iteration. I think it will certainly find its way, or at least I hope that it finds its way along the lines of one of the books I read this year, Ready Player One, where we sort of have this virtual world where you don't go to school, but you put your VR goggles on and you sit in your classroom kind of experience. So, but the current iteration, I think, requires players to kind of be a little more stationary, and then also people don't do well, at least from what I've seen, my experiences with people that I've seen play VR, they don't really do well with being moved in a VR space. So walking through a hallway or going up and down an elevator tends to get people feeling nauseous. So I think that's the challenges. One of the challenges that developers have to sort of come to grips with is, how do we get this experience to feel as real and awesome as this experience does, where I'm moving around, I'm dipping and dodging and trying to survive, but in a VR format. I think that's an awesome challenge for anyone who's going to be taking that on, but I do think it is something that you won't necessarily get exactly what you have now.
Yeah, I'd be really curious if movies and some more experiences just kind of took advantage of it. I think video games are a great medium and it makes a lot of sense, but it feels like doing some more experimental and different things could be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, we dabbled in the VR experience with Call of Duty when we first shipped Infinite Warfare, and there was the VR mode where you could fly the Jackal around. And that was a really awesome experience, because part of what I was mentioning earlier about that getting sick feeling is that moving through tunnels, through hallways. In our VR experience, because you're in the cockpit and you sort of have something caged around you, you feel like the thing around you is moving, not necessarily that your body is moving. And I think that separation of your body and your eyes, you know, looking one way and feeling like you're going to go one way, but your body's actually going in a different direction, was solved a lot because you were inside of a ship. So I think experiences like that, self-contained experiences like that, I think that's the infancy of where VR is ultimately going to go. But I'm excited for the future of what it can be for gaming, VR and AR for that matter. I could see sort of a combination of the two, really making video games feel like a completely different experience than what we were seeing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and definitely 20 or 30 years ago.
And kind of as we saw from Apple today, that they're doing a really big push into augmented reality on their devices.
Yeah. I think AR has there's definitely some interesting applications where AR really shines. But just like with VR, I think it's still in its infancy, and we've got to allow it to evolve. People have to take chances. People have to take chances on the medium, and really, I think with any format, it just takes one really great idea. It takes one really great piece of execution that pushes everyone into the right direction. I've seen it on platforms like the Nintendo 64. You just needed Super Mario 64 to show people this is how you move in a 3D environment. I think that's what VR needs. VR needs its killer app. You know, the Game Boy, when it first shipped, it had Tetris. And all it took was Tetris to tell people, hey, you should play games outside of your house. This is a great idea. And now people are playing games on their phone every single day as if it's not a big deal. When back in the day, it was $189 for a Game Boy and another, $30 for Tetris, and, carrying extra batteries around and all these things. And now all of a sudden you have all of that just sitting on your phone, waiting for you to attack whenever you want. So if you can't tell, I'm a huge video game nerd, and I love the evolution of the industry, and I'm really excited to see where things are ultimately headed. How are we doing on time?
Think we're okay on time? We'll see. I think the rest of your team is dead, though.
I think they are. I think they're all Afterlife ridden. I was just going to say, I did want to touch a little bit more on the director's cut content that I talked about earlier. We are putting a big sort of sign on the wall for people to know that this thing exists. We don't want this to be something that is so hidden that only a small portion of the community finds. We wanted this to be something that was built for everyone who's playing the game. So some of the things I had mentioned earlier before, playing Ghost and Skulls, I know that was a really tough challenge for people to get through, but there were some really awesome rewards sitting at the end of those. Those Ghost and Skulls rewards are actually going to be applied to the Director's Cut content. So when you play through Director's Cut, you'll actually be able to recover some of those powers when you go back in and playing the traditional game. So starting with a Perkaholic or starting with a Wonder Weapon like one of the Spaceland Zappers is something that the Director's Cut fans will get a chance to take part in. And of course, as I mentioned, all new Easter eggs, all new content hidden behind the Director's Cut. And then I've teased it before, and I will say on camera today, there is more than one ending to this game. We built more than one ending because there's a lot of information that we want you to sort of explore and come to grips with, so that when you get to that, you go, oh, now I can see the method to the madness. Infinity Ward, touche.
Well, so thanks so much for joining us, going through this final chapter in the Zombies adventure for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And this is available right now. It came out earlier today, right?
Yeah, right now for PS4 fans. And then not too long, we promise, Xbox and PC players, you guys will get a chance to have the cryptids tear your faces off too. They're waiting for you, we promise.
And if you have the Season Pass, of course you have access to this immediately, but this is also a standalone thing with the latest DLC pack as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you wanted to just grab just this piece of content, you can absolutely do that. It comes with 4 awesome MP maps. You get yourself a dynamic PlayStation 4 theme that has an awesome cryptid background that fades in and out, which is super cool. And then of course, the Beast from Beyond, the finale to this season of Zombies from In.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is a great way to whet your appetite, especially for people who are excited for their next Call of Duty adventure with World War II. Here's something to do in the meantime,
Yes,
which is
absolutely.
do a little bit more zombies. Lee Ross, again, thanks so much for joining us. And I was Justin Haywald, and that was Call of Duty Zombies. Have a good rest of the day.
Take care, guys.